Well, was it 2026, August 15th, maybe 16th? I don't know. It's been a great year for thinking about leadership, though, because of our 250-year anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And you think about those guys, was Adams and Jefferson. Jefferson really pretty much wrote the Declaration. He had some help from Franklin and Adams. And they were all probably involved quite a bit in the Constitution quite a few years later. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years later, that period. And that was a very strong time for American leadership. And so I've been thinking about leadership most of this year. And it's a little outside the kind of subjects I do. Usually I do, what's healthy, what's productive, what are you absorbing, what are you taking into your life so that you can be productive and put out something good. That's why I call it Absorption 77. But leadership's been on my mind so much. It's so very important. Those great leaders built our country on paper, and then the task of building our country in practice, in reality, in day-to-day life was very important, critical. And we're still building our country. We're still carrying on the American experiment, you could say. And it's had some ups and downs, tougher times, and some not so tough times. Feels like we're in some kind of tough time right now, I think, for a lot of people. And I really think this is where the Constitution and the early leadership that led us to have the checks and balances of our government, the Congress being divided into two houses, you'd say, and the legislative branch and the executive branch. I think all those checks and balances really make our country stronger, greater, because they don't allow any single group or faction or powerful lobby to take over and dominate. That would be a majority or a tyranny of the majority. We're still a democracy. We're really a republic that uses democratic policies and approaches. And of course, there are differences in all those opinions, but what is a democracy? What is a republic? What is a democratic republic and all that? And everybody's got their own definitions if they've got one. But we use democratic principles to elect representatives. And it's that leadership that we rely on so much for good policies that keep our country strong, keep our people vital, productive, and continue to make us a great country. Now, you can define great any way you want. I'm sure there are a lot of people that don't think we're a great country, but I'm convinced we are, and I think there's a lot of us that are convinced we are. Now, what do you do with that greatness? That's another question. But it takes leadership. I first started learning about leadership when I was a young Boy Scout. I was kind of just nudged into it, didn't really know it was part of what was expected in life. I was on a Tuesday night at our scout meetings. I was elected as patrol leader. It's like you get a little lieutenant's bar and you sew it on. And so, I had Mom sew that thing on. Went camping that weekend. And I'd been a Boy Scout, I'd been a Cub Scout, I'd been a Boy Scout for several years. And I became the patrol leader. And there was our scoutmasters were a couple of brothers from Vietnam. They'd just come back from Vietnam. And so they had a strong sense of military, composing yourself militarily. And of course the Boy Scouts was not a military organization, but a lot of the things you learned in Boy Scouts went a long ways toward preparing you if you did go into the military. And leadership was always something that was a part of what was going on. There was always somebody who ranked you or outranked you or was a co-equal or had some responsibility above yours. They were a rank above yours. And so you'd go through the ranks. What was it? Tenderfoot, second class, first class, Life Scout. I've forgotten the one above that. And then finally Eagle Scout. And you had ranks. You could be patrol leader. You could be senior patrol leader over all the patrol leaders. And then you could move into the adult part of scouting and be a leader there. So the first time I learned anything about leadership, I failed miserably. I got that patrol leader bar. My mom sewed it on. I remember that. And that very weekend, 5 days after I got elected to be or appointed to be a patrol leader, we went camping. And up at our scout camp in northern Jersey, it was called Camp Ahika. And there was a lake on it, beautiful lake, Lake Surprise. And I spent a lot of time in that camp, a lot of time on that lake, fishing, boating, swimming. And as soon as I got my pack off, we went to one of the cabins. I think there were 3 cabins there. Blackfoot, Choctaw was the newer one, and I can't remember the one we were in. That's going to bug me for days now. But we were in one of those cabins, and I love that cabin. I love starting the fires in the morning, cooking breakfast on the old wood stove. And it was just a great experience to come on out there, dear. I won't bother you. It was a great experience to learn the ways of scouting up at that camp. And so the first time I'm a new patrol leader, so I've got 5, 6, 7 young scouts that I'm in charge of. I'm responsible for them. I'm accountable for how they're doing and what they do, and make sure they don't hurt themselves with their axes and knives and start fires in the wrong places and all kinds of things like that. So I oversee them. And, first thing I did was throw my pack on the bed, same bed I always used at that cabin. And I took off with Rusty Appleby. He was the son of the camp ranger. And somehow he had made his way into our troop. And he was a member of our troop, but we never saw him much. And I knew he knew some things about camp that would tickle my adventurous side. And one of them was there was this legend about, what was his name? Hatchet Jack. I think that was his name. Hatchet Harry. That's right. And there were these huge, and I mean huge rocks, bigger than trees, that had fallen off the side or somehow scooted down the side of the cliff that maybe was 1,000 feet or so above Lake Surprise. And it was rumored that Hatchet Harry lived in those caves. So first thing I did, threw my pack off, didn't care a whit about the rest of my patrol. I just went hauling off with Appleby, and we went looking with Rusty Appleby, we went looking for Hatchet Harry. Well, we didn't find him, and I got back to camp, and I got the look, and I got a kind of a chewing out. These two guys had spent a year in Vietnam. They were careful. They didn't scream at me or yell at me, but I knew I was in some kind of trouble. And so Tuesday night, the next Tuesday, a week after I was elected patrol leader, had my stripes sewn on. Guess what? They came out, and my father had to do it, and he had to cut that patrol leader patch off. I failed. I failed to care for my team. And so that was the first. By the way, I never failed those guys again, or any of those scouts. I always put them first after that. It was a lesson that wasn't super hard to learn, but I learned it pretty quick and pretty convincingly. You see, leadership is seeing a problem, finding a solution to the problem, and then using the human resources to solve that problem. Uh, I failed on finding the problem. I failed on investing myself in a solution to the problem. And I failed on finding out about my team and what they were capable of, what their challenges were, what their problems were, and how we could unite together, click together, and solve the most impressive, the most important and the most pressing problem right in front of us. That's what leadership does. Like I say, I never failed those guys again after that. It was so vital to me to keep that lesson involved, to keep that lesson alive in me, because I didn't want to let them down. I didn't want to let my team down after that. I wanted to be a good leader. I went to some leadership training in Valley Forge, which was quite a few hours away in Pennsylvania from where we lived in northern Jersey. And it was 2 weeks of scout training for advanced leadership, really. And by the end of that, I was elected. I had gone around to the different camps. There were like 6 camps of different leaders from different councils all over Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And I'd gone around and spent time with all these people, young scouts. And by the time the end was coming, we were near like 10 days in. There was time to elect a senior patrol leader out of a couple hundred young men. They elected me. I was pretty surprised, but it was because I had learned that lesson to go out and step up and pay attention to my charges, you might say, to the people that were to get together and become young leaders. And my leadership proved pretty important to them, and they showed it, not by rewarding me, but by assigning me to be their leader. You got to step up when it's time to be a leader. You got to realize that not everything you do, and there's my dog barking. Hey, Tookie, quiet. Everything that you do is designed to make them more productive, designed to invest in them, to get more good things out of them, not to use them in a classic sense and throw them away, which is what a lot of Vietnam soldiers felt. They felt like they were just being used as cannon fodder and being tossed away. It was a terrible feeling. Some of our greatest officers, Schwarzkopf and Colin Powell and others who were in Vietnam, came away from that saying, we're never going to treat our soldiers that way again. We're going to protect them, and we're going to use them in battle in ways that make sense to them and accomplish the mission with minimal casualties. It was a profound lesson, and it's one we're still learning. You're going to use your people to get the most out of them and to be the most productive and the least amount of pain and the most amount of wisdom and the most amount of usefulness, and they'll live their lives proud of what they accomplished. That's what leadership does. There's probably 1,000 or more definitions of leadership, but mine is setting yourself aside and finding a group of people that you can bring together, use to solve problems that we all see need to be solved. When you're called to leadership, pay attention to that. You probably will be at some point. If you got half a mind on your head, if you got half a heart for people, you're gonna be faced with a chance to be a leader. Step up. Don't be afraid of your lack of training. Don't be underconfident. These people who asked you to be a leader, they saw something in you. that they said we could exploit that, we could train that, we could pick up on that and enhance this person's ability to lead. So trust those people at least as much as you can, and trust them and say, what did you learn what they saw in you, and then go out and start to develop your leadership skills. Anyway, we need good leaders today. We need leaders that are willing to be trained, to be educated, to be mentored, to be coached along. And find your mentors. Find those people that used to do your job, that were called to lead before you were. And go to lunch with them. Take them out. Say, hey, can I buy you a coffee, a tea, a chocolate shake? Let's go do something together. And you teach me a little bit about what it was that you found out about your leadership. We need leaders today. Anyway, that's Marty for Absorption 77 for good leadership. We'll see you later.